My name is Tonya Bauer, and I serve on the Board of Trustees of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spartanburg. It is my delight to welcome you all this morning, whether you're here at UUCS or virtually. This is a welcoming congregation where everyone is welcome just as we are. If you are visiting us this morning, we would love to meet you to share more about the life of this congregation. Visitors' cards may be found in the pocket on the back of the chair in front of you. Please feel welcome to fill one out and place it in the offering plate during the service so we can connect with you. There are many important announcements at the back of your bulletin titled Connect. Please open your bulletin to see all that you can be a part of. Allow me to share a few now. The Restrooms for All renovation project is in full swing and is going to continue from February all through May 2023. For many months, we have discussed as a congregation how to create restrooms in our RE wing that retain capacity, create equity, and improve safety and accessibility. Together, we created a new plan that includes all of these priorities. A generous gift has been made to make this project possible, and the board has now approved moving forward with the renovation. So this renovation will occur over 2 phases. The first phase, mid-February to mid-March, the renovation of current men's restroom. The second phase, mid-March to May, renovation of current women's restroom. During the first phase of renovation, the current women's restroom will convert to an all-gender restroom. This restroom features locking stall doors. Please also make use of restrooms in the sanctuary and Wild Hall in order to spread out restroom use and provide comfort for everyone. Once the current men's restroom is renovated, that restroom will also serve as an all-gender restroom with locking doors. Shadow Plate, our Shadow Plate this month is for SCUJA, the 1-year-old South Carolina UU Justice Alliance, which is enabling UU congregations and like-minded organizations across the state to work together for change in South Carolina. Next month, we'll shed a plate to help Ukraine fighting for freedom against Russian aggression. Our gifts will fund medical teams in Ukraine. Also a reminder that the registration for the Mountain Church Retreat weekend, April 28th to 30th, has been open. See the flyer attached to this bulletin for information about the retreat and to register. Scholarships are available, so don't hesitate to ask Scott or Sybil if needed. There is also the Faith Initiative to End Child Poverty quarterly lunch meeting on Tuesday, March 7th, 12 to 2 p.m. at Mount Moriah Baptist Church. You are invited to the quarterly lunch meeting at the Faith Initiative to End Child Poverty. The Faith Initiative to End Child Poverty is a cooperative effort of congregations to end child poverty in Spartanburg. The meeting will be a time of fellowship, shared learning, and planning. Everyone is welcome. Lunch will be served. Please RSVP to Scott Neely to help ensure food for all. Thank you for making this place of warmth and kindness every time we gather across all of our differences. Thank you, everyone, for all you do and all you give to make this world more livable for every one of us. Welcome today.
The song I'm going to sing is written by this gentleman right here. It's very pretty. Welcome, welcome, step inside. The circle of love is open wide. The worth of each person won't be denied. Take your place us in the circle of love. Sister, brother, stranger, friend, circle of compassion has no end. May the wounds of all carry begin to mend as we join the circle of love. Seeker, ask your question here. Stories we share draw wisdom near. Knowing others, knowing ourselves more clear. So we learn in the circle of love. Give back to a world in need. Justice and mercy, plant the seed. So much we can do if we call, we heed, to reach out from the circle of love. Look and listen, celebrate the blessings of life, both small and great. In the web of life we all participate. We belong in the circle of love. We belong in the circle of love.
I would like to add my welcome to Tonia's. My name is Riley Lanier, and I am your service leader for this service. Scott Neely, our regular minister, is not in the pulpit today, but in his place, we have a representative from Scooja, Nathan, who will be introduced later. And our share of the plate also goes to Scooja, and that is an acronym. And I've forgotten exactly what it stands for. But it's social justice, and Nathan will explain that better later. Let's get ready for our service. In the words of Bell Hooks, there can be no love without justice. Notice the beautiful rippling roll to my right here. We place a stone or a shell in it to magnify our joys and lessen our concerns. As the ripples go out, they represent the spiritual energy of our congregation. 2 stones will be placed in the bowl for people who are watching virtually. Please come forward and place your stone or shell now.
Spinning in line, marking time, waiting for the welfare dime, 'cause they can't buy a job. Man in the silk suit hurries by, catches the poor old lady's eye. Just for fun, he says, get a job. That's just the way it is. Some things never change. That's just the way it is. Oh, but don't you believe them? Hey, little boy, you can't go where the others go, 'cause you don't look like they do. And I said, hey, old man, how can you stand to think that way? Did you really think about it before you made the rules? He said, that's just the way it is. Some things never change. That's just the way it is. Oh, but don't you believe them?
Sydney, that was a wonderful rendition of that song. Thank you.
And Ron.
And Ron.
Ron is here just a couple days after having surgery.
You recognize Ron also. Our covenant was developed by the congregation through the democratic process. It is a wonderful expression of how we want to be with ourselves and the community. It can be found in your order of service. So I invite you to read it with me. We are people of faith and hope. Together we covenant to strive to become better selves, to honor both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to respond to systems of violence and oppression with the power of a love beyond belief. We set aside this part of the service to greet one another personally. We ask that everyone honor each other's wishes concerning personal space. And you are welcome to stay seated. Stay seated if you want. For those of you watching virtually, feel free to send a text or make a phone call to someone you care about. When you hear the music play, it's time to quietly return to your seat so that we can continue with the rest of the service. Now, let the holy chaos begin. During the greeting, a little bird told me that SCUJA stands for the South Carolina Unitarian Universalist Justice Alliance. And it's made up of all congregations in South Carolina to take action with the legislature. And I attended one of their updates on Thursday night and left very inspired. So we look forward to what Nathan has to say. And it was mentioned earlier, our share of the plate funds will go to SCUJA this month. This means that half of the collection plate and all designated funds go to SCUJA. And you can also donate to Share the Plate on our website. Now that this is the time during the service we reflect and consider giving monetarily to the church. We give of ourselves in many ways to sustain this community. As the collection plate is passed to you, please grasp it with both hands and pass it to the next person beside you. May the ushers now come forward.
Surrounded by four walls that ain't so pretty. His parents give him love and affection to keep him strong.
Good morning. My name is Rick Honnenberg, and I am going to be introducing you to Reverend Nathan. I'm also a member of the South Carolina UU Justice Alliance, better known as SCUJA. Reverend Nathan Woodliff Stanley was educated at Swarthmore College in Pennsylvania and graduated in '85. He also has a dual degree from Yale Divinity School and Yale School of Management with an MBA equivalent, which really kind of it will outline some of his professional experience. From 1992 to 2002, Reverend Nathan was the executive director of the Mississippi Center for Nonprofits. It was founded and organized by statewide organizations in management and supported 501c3 organizations in Mississippi, eventually coming out to over 300 members. In 23 to 04, he actually moved to Colorado, and he became a ministerial intern at the First Unitarian Church in Denver, later becoming the social responsibility facilitator, which is more a social justice minister at the Jefferson Unitarian Church in Golden, Colorado. This is the same church that Peter Morales, if anybody knows that name, was president of the UUA. And that church, by the way, he was there from 2005 to 2012, and the church served about 750 members. He was offered a position in which he took at the executive director of the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, in Colorado, where he was the executive director from 2012 to 2020. And he also was, after that, he was there, became a consulting minister at a UU church in Carbondale. And then he moved to South Carolina. His wife was elected the Episcopal Bishop of South Carolina. And so they moved in May of 2021. We lost, Pippin Whitaker was the first executive director, and we were fortunate to find Nathan in Charleston. He's the community minister over there, and he agreed to be our executive director. So I'm just going to thank him for working with us. And Nathan, it's yours next. Thank you.
The program says to have a moment of silence, so let's do that now. So good morning. It is quite a pleasure for me to be here with you today, to meet some of you in person after only seeing you on Zoom, and to get to be in Spartanburg for the first time. As you know, and as Riley made clear, I'm here today because I am the new executive director of the South Carolina Unitarian Universalist Justice Alliance. We call it SCUJA for short, which may be a somewhat unfortunate acronym, but it's way better than saying the whole name every time. I sometimes say that when I'm taking my car around the state to visit congregations, I'm doing SCUJA driving. But anyway, this particular visit to a congregation is sort of a homecoming because you have a very special relationship to SCUJA here in Spartanburg. In fact, Skuja is legally a part of U. The UU Church of Spartanburg is Skuja's fiscal sponsor, so we are technically a project of this congregation. Our accounts are held here with Miga Batten keeping the books. Rick Honenberg is the chair of the Skuja board, and your minister, Reverend Scott, has been very supportive. Sort of, yeah, you kind of are. When Skuja was launched last year, it all started right here with the Reverend Dr. Pippin Whitaker coming here to launch our first matching grant campaign. Pippin later took a call to ministry in Georgia, and I ended up filling her role alongside the Reverend Dr. Jean Harriet, who co-founded Skuja. I think she spoke here in July, and who continues to lead our training and education work. I'm also excited to be here because even though we're working with all of the UU congregations in the state, you've been one of the most active congregations in Skuja so far. You sent so many get out the vote letters, I think over 5,000, that UU the Vote named you a good trouble congregation, using the phrase made famous by John Lewis. There were only 19 good trouble congregations nationwide, and 2 of them were here in South Carolina, you and the congregation in Aiken. So congratulations on that. I'm eager to learn more than I know so far about your social justice programs. This is obviously a very socially active congregation. And I look forward to working with you in many ways through my role at Skuja. So thank you for being our official home. As for me, I've been a UU minister for almost 2 decades, and I came to South Carolina, as you heard, from Colorado a year and a half ago after my wife Ruth became the first woman elected bishop of the Episcopal Diocese of South Carolina. That's the one based in Charleston. There are actually 2 Episcopal dioceses, the other one in South Carolina, the other one based in Columbia. For reasons you can imagine, I have a lot of interest in interfaith organizing. I worked in Denver for about a decade in UU social justice ministry and then as director of the ACLU of Colorado. We had our challenges there, but also many victories, and I'm sobered by how much more difficult it sometimes is to work for justice here in South Carolina. I would love to be working on more positive reforms, but right now we're up against a wave of attacks on transgender youth specifically and LGBTQ rights generally, and as well as attacks on abortion rights and reproductive freedom, on books and on teachers trying to teach accurate history about slavery and race, on any reasonable regulation of violent weaponry, and on voting rights, including an effort to set up closed primaries to effectively disenfranchise a lot of South Carolina voters. The response of Skuja is to bring together all 10 of our Unitarian Universalist congregations in South Carolina, to bring in national UU resources from Side with Love, UU the Vote, the UUSC, and many other UU justice groups, and then to join forces with nonprofit partners in the state, including the League of Women Voters, the NAACP, the ACLU, REN, Appleseed, SC United, and local interfaith groups, among others. We also want to be clear that we want to root our work deeply in the people and communities impacted by injustice, centering their voices and listening to their stories. Truthful stories matter. I live just blocks from Mother Emanuel AME Church, where Senator Clementa C. Pinckney and 8 other community members died in a hateful mass shooting, making it inexcusable that South Carolina is one of only 2 states without a hate crimes law, and also inexcusable that we would think about making it easier for anyone over 18 to carry guns into churches or any other place. That's why we are supporting the Clementa C. Pinckney Hate Crimes Act and opposing the Permitless Gun Carry Act that has already passed the House. I've heard heart-wrenching stories of parents whose children are transgender trying to provide them best practices care that they need while their own legislature tries to take those options away. Living as an LGBTQ plus person in this state is hard enough without healthcare bans, book bans, drag show bans, and even a bill that would force couples in same-sex marriages to assign a bride and a groom in order to get a marriage license. Abortion bans are moving through the legislature again, but I know how essential access to abortion can be in all kinds of circumstances not accounted for by politicians. And there are a lot of people fighting against further limits on the access we have so far in this state. It costs lives to not be able to afford health care in a state that won't expand Medicaid, another issue with many stories to be told. There's stories to hear from immigrant communities, and we've all seen stories and examples of Black lives treated by police and other people as if they do not matter far too many times. Now, in Black History Month of all times, we are seeing efforts to silence truthful teaching about Black history. We have many secular partners responding to these same realities and stories. And you don't have to come from a faith perspective to care about justice issues. So why is social justice so important to us as Unitarian Universalists? For me, working for justice is a form of ministry rooted deeply in our faith, and it is a shared ministry that we can all engage in. I find that the stressful work of justice is more sustainable and often more fun when it is rooted in a community that sings and worships together, that cares for each other even when we are in hard places, and that shares a vision of the kind of world that we wish to build. Now, just as our nation has stated values that we have never lived up to, we need to be honest about our Unitarian Universalist history even when we have not lived up to our own ideals. But the call to justice is there in our faith, deeply rooted in Unitarian Universalist history, in our principles and values, and in our shared vision of beloved community. It is there in the Universalist vision of even heaven being a place of inclusion. And among the early Unitarians in 1920s Boston, where Joseph Tuckerman essentially became the first Unitarian community minister, advocating alongside people living in poverty and helping define the profession of social work. The history of UU ministry has other stories we can learn from as well. From Olympia Brown, the first woman ordained as a Universalist, to Ethelred Brown, the first Black Unitarian minister. Olympia Brown was told by the Unitarian Meadville Seminary that educating a woman for ministry was too great an experiment. But she managed to get into St. Lawrence University and went on to serve in ministry and even vote in 1920 after the success of the suffrage movement that she helped to lead. Ethelred Brown got into Meadville, but American Unitarians were so segregated that no church would have him after he graduated. He went on to work for civil and economic rights in Jamaica and to start his own church in Harlem. Though resisted in their day, these ministers are now seen as cornerstones of our call to justice and inclusion, but we must not forget how hard the path has been to get here. Since the merger of the Unitarians and the Universalists in 1961, the call to justice has continued to be central to our faith. From the civil rights era, even with the heartbreaking mistakes of the so-called empowerment controversy in the late 60s, to UU leadership in the struggle for marriage equality. Justice is central both to the statement of principles and sources adopted in 1985 and the currently proposed statement of UU values that will be voted on at the next General Assembly, placing love at the center and adding an emphasis on anti-racism and beloved community. The simple welcome song that I wrote 20 years ago that you heard earlier in the service is loosely based on our UU principles, mentioning compassion, justice, and the web of life. It's also a song about a circle of love. I'm reminded of a short poem from Edwin Markham that went like this. He drew a circle that shut me out, heretic, rebel, a thing to flout. But love and I had the wit to win. We drew a circle and took him in. In a nation and world with so much hate and so much division, I long for an inclusive love big enough to overcome and transform it all. I know the ultimate vision of our faith is not just victory over opponents, but beloved community that is transformative. Still, welcoming and inclusion are harder than we might like them to be, not only in relation to those who oppose us, but even for those we believe we want to include. That's why Skuja offered a transgender welcoming class last year, and a deeper 6-week course on transgender inclusion is for each congregation in the state is starting next week. Whether the barriers are around race, gender, ability, or anything else, welcoming and inclusion require very intentional effort. In the meantime, as much as we wish for a world with less division and hate, it is worth our efforts now to hold the line against policies that would take us backwards and further divide us here in South Carolina. While as a church we are legally barred from supporting or opposing political parties or candidates, we are allowed to encourage voting, to speak out on issues, and even to support or oppose legislation or ballot initiatives within limits that we fall safely inside right now. And of course, you can engage in partisan campaigns as much as you want as an individual. If you aren't on it already, I encourage you to sign up on Skuja's website for our email list to get our action alerts and our monthly newsletter. And you can call in to our legislative update each month. The next one is on March 23rd. Even with so much dangerous legislation to fight against, there are some opportunities for positive legislation, including the hate crimes bill, some environmental legislation, rights of tenants facing eviction, some smaller voting reforms, and juvenile justice reform. Legislators don't get as many calls as you might think, so it can actually matter when you contact them. Many legislators, along with the media, tend to assume that there is one primary religious perspective, so it is especially helpful for them to hear our voices with a different message coming from a church. And of course, the work of justice in South Carolina and in our UU congregations is not just about the State House. Local policies matter too, as illustrated by school boards that have become hotspots for book bans and censorship. It helps to know what is happening in other communities, so Skuja has joined a statewide Right to Read coalition. In support of justice, there's a lot we can do to keep learning and growing as individuals and as congregations. From book reads and sharing stories to education on inclusion and engagement with the people and communities around us, especially those most feeling the effects of injustice. I know you're doing some of that work right now here in Spartanburg. It matters, of course, to vote, and you have shown what is possible when you come together to promote voting. Regardless of what happens in the legislature, we can provide justice-oriented care in our own communities. Even if they pass censorship bills, we can teach honest history and read inclusive books. Even if they pass abortion bans, we can help people navigate their options when they need an abortion. If they attack immigrants or LGBTQ+ communities, we can do the hard work of becoming more genuinely inclusive and welcoming. We can honor Black history every month, learn to live in more environment and climate-friendly ways, provide for people without housing or health care, practice accountability by calling in rather than calling out, build interfaith relationships, and practice nonviolence in our lives. And anytime it feels like too much, we can care and support for one another right here. We can sing and worship and feel the joy of being together. It helps to know we are not alone. And that is true both in our congregations and statewide with a group like Skuja. Another thing Skuja is working on is a plan for a statewide UU Fall Festival, probably in Columbia, with a tentative date of September 30th. I don't know if there has ever been a statewide UU gathering in South Carolina before, but we would like to see it happen. We want to connect justice leaders across congregations on issue teams where there's enough interest. And we want to learn from each other as well as from what similar state action networks are doing in other states. If you share your own stories and photos of what you're doing in this congregation, we want to put that in our newsletter too. We can do more when we're connected, and it is more fun as well. So thank you for your support for Skuja here in Spartanburg, in your plate collection, as our fiscal sponsor, and as a Good Trouble congregation. For Skuja to make it for the long haul, we'll need an ongoing base of support from our 10 congregations and from individual supporters. We're just beginning another matching campaign with a challenge grant from the UU funding program. It should be up on Faithify within a week, so take a look, and thank you for supporting us there as well. If you have any questions about Skuja, I will stick around after the service, and I do have sign-up sheets for our newsletter and action alert list if you're not already on that. I've worked for justice in both secular and faith-based settings, and I'm glad to be doing this work in UU congregations again, because it gives me deeper context for the work. Work for justice is part of our faith tradition. It is a form of ministry, and I like to think of it not just in terms of the issues themselves, but as a move toward beloved community, toward a transformed world in which everyone belongs, where division and hate do not have the final word, where love for truth and justice and all people and living beings is our deepest guide. These are not easy times, but that's why we need each other all the more. I look forward to joining with you in shared ministry of Skuja and this congregation in the months and years ahead. May it be so. Thank you.
as we extinguish our chalice this morning, let us take to heart the profound words of Cornel West. Justice is what love looks like in public.
The work of justice is shared ministry. So may we join in that ministry together, inspired by love and with care for all. May we make it so. Amen. Go in peace.